Hello and a warm welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. Western powers appear to be having cold feet about sending fighter jets to Ukraine to help in fighting Russian forces who have invaded their country. The latest world leader to respond in the negative about the jets being the U.S. President Joe Biden, who simply responded no when asked about it yesterday. The U.K. was also not on board with the decision, saying it was not practical for it to send its aircraft to Ukraine. The UK Defence Ministry having received news recently its military might was slipping. Now, Germany has also said it will not send fighter jets to Ukraine. A number of other European leaders have been less definitive about the move as well. The only one perhaps sure of sending jets is most likely France. President Emmanuel Macron said by definition nothing is excluded when asked about it ahead of his meeting with the Ukrainian minister. The US-made F-16s would be a significant upgrade on the Soviet-era fighting jets, mostly MiGs, that Ukraine is currently using, which were made before the country declared independence from the USSR in 1991. Ukraine says the advanced jets will help protect its skies from Russian attacks. Though the United States may not be sending those fighter jets to Ukraine, but they are definitely sending 60 Bradley fighting vehicles as part of a new weapons package to help fight the Russian invasion. The United States has increasingly sent more capable weapons to Ukraine as the war progressed and Ukraine's needs changed. More complex weapon systems, including high-mobility artillery rocket systems, the HIMARS, and National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile Systems, were shipped to Kyiv. Most recently, the United States pledged to send a Patriot missile system to repel Russian missile and drone attacks. Training and other logistics still need to be worked out. Bradleys, the armored vehicle with a powerful gun, have been used as a staple by the U.S. Army to carry troops around battlefields since the mid-1980s. Joining me now to talk more about this is a geopolitical analyst, Major Adebayo Adeleke. He joins me from Texas in the United States. Major, thanks for joining me on the program today.
Oh, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Let's begin. The
Awesome.
Ukrainian president had looked forward to the arrival of the jets, looking to protect its airspace against those Russian attacks. Hearing the mixed messages by the U.S. and some European allies must be hard, a hard pill to swallow at this time, where the invasion is entering its one-year mark.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, I wasn't expecting these escalatory kind of methodologies that's going on from the Ukrainian side as well. And I understand because from the European and the Western allies as well, they want to keep this thing as low cost as possible. They want to keep it this as a ground campaign as much as possible. When this thing enters a air campaign, it's a different ball game. This has just turned to a full-blown war. It's going to throw Europe into the full-blown war, and I don't think the NATO forces are ready to actually get to that level yet. And most importantly, I don't think they want to, because there's a lot of the logistical constraint when this thing gets into the shipment of aircraft over there to start fighting, the fighter jets to start fighting over there. You have to be worried about the supply chain that supports it. You have to be worried about all of that things that is very encompassing. There's a lot of support system that goes into this, and how do you kind of maintain that kind of level of effort, and also the people to operate this as well. When you start getting all these F-16s over there, of course, definitely it's not going to be given to the Ukrainian. It will require some Western forces to kind of maintain. There's a maintenance of these aircraft. There's a missile to fire in as well. It's going to pay for it. All these things are not properly thought through. At some point, I think there's a course of action on the table that just in case this particular war effort reaches that level, but nobody's willing to pull the trigger. As you can see, UK is not willing to toe that line yet, and so is the United States of America is not willing to toe that line. And I think the president of France as well will probably reconsider this. And so, as you can see, U.S. government are sending 60 fighting vehicles, Bradley fighting vehicles, which is infantry fighting vehicles, to kind of keep this thing, as a ground attack. And I think the idea is to where the Russian forces to ground attack. I mean, NATO forces do have they have air superiority. Looking at them, if you match them against the Russian capabilities, but at the same time, it's not something that you want to go in there because it's going to be heavy casualty involved when you start doing about air campaigns and whatnot.
But do you think in any way that perhaps, why they are undecided about this, it could be they are trying to stock up just in case they become targets of Russian airstrikes?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think nothing is off the table at this point in time because you also have to understand that Putin is a rational actor. So anything when you're actually dealing with it, when you're irrational, we consider ourselves from the Western point of view as a rational actor. When you're dealing with Putin, who is not a rational actor, anything is on the table. So you cannot put Putin, engaging during the air campaign, you can't put it out of his reach. As well as you can see, he has suggested the use of nuclear weapon initially, so which kind of that one has been de-escalated over the course of time. But at the same time, when you start attacking using fighter jets as well, of course, Ukraine have to, at some point in time, they have to actually retaliate as well. So this particular war is getting grinded. Like I said earlier before, I think the best course of action to get out of this is to create a pathway for Russia to bow out gracefully. Nothing, if this thing continues, is going to, turn out to a grinding war between the West and the so-called the Eurasia, which Russia is already part of. So it's I don't expect it to be this long, but apparently it's the battle of the will at this point in time.
Indeed. But how do you think Ukraine feels when it hears this mixed messages, from these allies, so-called?
Of course, if I'm from the Ukrainian side, I'll feel dejected. I'll feel like we've been led to face our death in this particular point in time, because I think there has been some resurgence from the Russian side of things, and they have to be able to be matched from the Ukrainian side as well. It's a lot of ground campaigns, a lot of ground that's been ceded before. The Russians are coming back after it as well. But when the Ukrainian told the line to fight this war, they understand that the Western allies will support them. But to that grade of support, that level of support, I don't think it was crystal clear of what is a lot of. The U.S. Congress voted billions of dollars to continue to support it. And I don't know what that package really entails as well. At the same time, this is not the war that was really crafted through. It was supposed to kind of engage them initially, but now that you're asking for more, and at this point in time, Ukraine is pretty much asking the Western allies to come and fight this war for them. And I think that's what they are preventing. They do not want to really engage one-on-one. This is supposed to be a proxy war whereby they use Ukraine as a battleground. But at this point in time, and I think they've invested so much in it, I don't think at any point in time the Western world we allowed Russia to actually yield. To gain ground on this particular point in time. They might not. Initially, they might not kind of welcome the idea of ground campaigns, but I think they'll kind of suggest another alternative course of action to be used to be able to counter the Russian attack.
Somewhat, it is possible that Ukraine president could ask for these fighter jets, maybe with time, but perhaps for now, it was pretty much just as we heard with the Leopard 2 tanks, and a lot of people talked about the impact of those tanks, and now Germany has given approval, so that might benefit Ukraine in a way. Do you agree with that? And do you think that the fighter jets could also be another game changer, just as we thought with the Leopard 2 tanks?
Absolutely. When you start talking about those prime movers in military warfare, fighter jets, tanks, Bradley vehicles, you've pretty much escalated this particular war from being a proxy war to a full-blown war. And at this particular point in time, there has to be some coordination between all the forces that are actually acting on ground in Ukraine. The use of weapons requires, for example, from our own logistical background, each tank requires like a helmet of 2,500 gallons of diesel to support it. So there's a lot of considerations to happen, especially the kind of soil and in part of this winter, Eastern Europe winter that is going on over there. There's a lot of things to consider actually pulling tanks over there, who's going to repair it, what kind of support system is it. It's not about the tactical engagement that really worries most of these Western allies. It's about the support system that goes with it, which a lot of Ukrainians are not properly trained in it. So it involves committing a lot of Western forces to be able to support this thing, which they haven't, because I don't think this particular war, as it has gone for too long, a lot of people have mixed feelings. Even on this Western front, in the US, in the UK, a lot of them have mixed feelings about what are we doing in Ukraine as well. So as the war continues to drag on, the support for the war is continue to dwindle, and with that, it's going to be very hard for them to commit forces. You can commit weapons and ammunitions all you can, but somebody has to fire them, and that's where the friction is. That's where the bone of contention is from my point of view.
And Major, Russia could take advantage of this mixed signals.
Absolutely, absolutely. But at the same time, I think they have enough planners to understand that for every action, there's always a reaction. So for every action that the Western forces are actually considering, they understand the reaction and they understand the counter from the Western front as well. So as you can see, it's been swinging back and forth since the beginning of this conflict between Ukraine and the Western forces. Between Ukraine and Russia. So any lapse in Ukraine military engagement, the Russian will exploit it, and the same thing goes for any lack in Russian engagement, the Ukraine and the Western forces will exploit it. So I don't see anything changing from that back and forth. I think this indecision about the use of prime movers, just as tanks and fighter jets, as we continue to debate on it, I believe Russia is going to capitalize on it to make some move and to gain some ground.
In terms of the body language of the United States, perhaps other members of the European Union, do you think they're pushing for more dialogue, return to the negotiating table for both sides in this war?
At least I think dialogue will continue to go on. I think dialogue has never ceased. I think most of these, if you look at it, Russia and the US cooperate on so many fronts, if not, maybe not on Ukraine, but they cooperate in other fronts as well. And I think at some point in time, they have, like I said, they have to create a pathway for Russia to buy out of this gracefully. And I don't know when that time will come, how that time will come, but that's the only way I foresee this thing actually coming to an end, figuring out a way for Russia to kind of buy out of this thing. But it can only come through the use of dialogue, and dialogue comes through the use of military engagement as well. It's kind of weird how these things kind of all nested together. But as military engagement continues, so its dialogue is continuing as well. It's part of what they call the military dime. It's a strategy they use, old Western strategies. So it will definitely work out at some point. How it's going to work out is still unknown to me, to be honest with you, because I believe by now we should have some kind of resolution. But so far, it seems as if this thing is being escalated to a different ballgame entirely. And I don't think the Western world wants to actually take on that escalatory path.
Indeed. Geopolitical analyst Major Adeboye Adeleke, thank you for joining me on the program.
Thank you so much.
In the meantime, over in Poland, training is ongoing for use of the Leopard tanks. Polish commander of the 10th Brigade of Armored Cavalry, Major Banisiński, said they are running 5 courses at the Leopard Training Center. One of the courses is for the tank crews, for the gunner, loader, and commander. The second course, he says, is for the tank drivers for Leopard 2A4, 2A5, and 2PL. He says there are also specialist courses for the mechanics for the armor, the chassis and additional equipment that goes with Leopard tanks. Just a while ago, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba introduced the country will, announced that the country will receive 120 to 140 tanks in the first wave of deliveries from a coalition of 12 countries. Kyiv secured pledges from the West this month to supply main battle tanks to help fend off Russia's full-scale invasion, with Moscow mounting huge efforts to make incremental advances in eastern Ukraine. It plans to launch a major counter-offensive to recapture swaths of territory taken by Russia in the south and east of the country. Ukraine is also concerned that Russia could launch its own major offensive in the coming weeks or months. And Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is visiting Germany, where he has met with Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Mr. Scholz welcomed Lula and said he was delighted about the country's return to the world stage following last year's election. He also said Lula and Brazil could fully count on Germany's solidarity, with his visit coming just weeks after supporters of former far-right President Jair Bolsonaro stormed government buildings in the capital. Mr. Scholz also rejected Russia's invasion of Ukraine, warning against the return to a law of the strongest over borders. Lula said China has an important role to play in Ukraine's peace talks, which he will discuss on a planned visit to Beijing in March. Lula said Brazil will work with other nations to help achieve peace in Ukraine, as his country has not taken sides. And NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg says the alliance will continue to strengthen its partnership with Japan amid the ongoing Ukraine war. He made the comments during his visit to the Iruma Air Base in Saitama Prefecture, where he met Japan Air Self-Defense Force troops and viewed aircraft and equipment. The NATO Secretary-General is on a Northeast Asia tour in the hopes of strengthening ties with U.S. allies in the face of the war in Ukraine. Japan is providing Ukraine non-lethal military supplies, humanitarian assistance, as well as financial support. And Russia says calls from the president of Lithuania to supply Ukraine with fighter planes highlighted the extremely aggressive position of the Baltic states and Poland, and that major European countries should counterbalance their stance. Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda said on Monday that NATO should stop drawing red lines and should supply Ukraine with whatever weapons it's needed, including fighter jets and long-range missiles. When asked about those comments, the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters, quote, "In general, we see an extremely aggressive position from representatives of the Baltic countries and Poland. They are apparently ready to do anything to provoke the growth of further confrontation with little regard for the consequences." Well, he added, of course, it is very sad that under these conditions, the leaders of major European countries who drive all European processes, unfortunately, do not play a balancing role. Mr. Nausėda's call followed decisions last week by Germany and the US to supply battle tanks to Ukraine, a move Russia described as an escalation of the conflict. And in the meantime, Russia has claimed control over the village of Leopard north of Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine, where some of the heaviest fighting in the war has taken place in recent weeks. The village, according to Russia's defense ministry, was captured with the help of aerial support. The Wagner Group, designated by the US as a transnational criminal organization, had already said on Saturday that its unit had taken control of that community, but Kyiv said that it had repelled an attack on the village. Russia claims to have taken control of several locations around Bakhmut, where its troops and private Wagner mercenaries have been locked for months in a battle of attrition with Ukrainian forces. And since the Russia-Ukraine conflict began almost 1 year ago, damaged and destroyed buildings have been commonplace across Ukraine, with very few resources available to repair them. But in the small city of Hostomel, on the outskirts of the capital city, Kyiv, local volunteers are working round the clock in the hope of reversing the damage. A year ago, 55 children were studying in a small elementary school, but once the fighting suspended, the building was left without a roof or walls. Now, the 120-year-old building has been repaired by volunteers made up of ordinary young Ukrainians under sponsorship by charity groups. With both free buildings, materials and labor, this project has been completed at a fraction of the real cost. It's good news for the town, as neither the government nor regional authorities have funds for the repair. It is hoped that this model can be replicated to damaged buildings in other parts of the Kyiv region.